Let me open your eyes to a harsh reality that most men have to learn the hard way. A woman can love you with everything she has and still take you completely for granted. It sounds like a contradiction, but it happens every single day in relationships all over the world. The most dangerous part about this dynamic is that it rarely stems from hatred or malicious intent. She isn't sitting in a room plotting ways to disrespect you or minimize your worth. Instead, she is simply reacting to emotional momentum. When you are always there, always answering the phone on the first ring, always forgiving every mistake, and always centering your entire universe around her happiness, your presence loses its weight. Human nature dictates that we do not value things that come without a cost. And when your attention is entirely free and unlimited, it becomes invisible. She becomes comfortable, then she becomes complacent, and finally, she becomes entitled to a level of devotion she hasn't earned. You have to understand how the female mind processes your consistency. To you, being patient, understanding, and constantly available is proof of your love and loyalty. You think you are building a secure foundation. But without strong boundaries, she translates your consistency into weakness. She begins to mistake your endless patience for a lack of other options, secretly believing that you stay because you have nowhere else to go. She assumes that your emotional stability is a permanent fixture she can tap into whenever she pleases, while offering less and less of herself in return. It is a slow, subtle shift where you go from being her prized partner to her predictable safety net. She stops feeling the thrill of the chase. She stops wondering how you feel. And she stops putting in the effort to keep you because her subconscious mind is absolutely convinced that you are never going to leave. But everything changes the exact moment you choose to break the cycle. The shift never happens while you are standing there arguing, pleading for her attention, or trying to explain why you feel unappreciated. Words do not work when a person has grown deaf to your value. The real shift only happens when you actively stop chasing, when your presence begins to fade from her daily life, and when the silence between you finally gets too loud to ignore. It is the sudden, jarring absence of your energy that shatters her complacency. When you pull back your attention, stop texting first, and remove your accessibility, it creates an immediate emotional vacuum. The comfortable routine she took for granted is suddenly replaced by a cold, unpredictable reality that she was completely unprepared to face. This is the exact moment a profound psychological switch flips inside her mind. When you are no longer a guaranteed certainty in her life, her ego experiences a massive shock. The silence forces her to sit alone with her own thoughts, and without your constant validation to feed her confidence, anxiety begins to creep in. She goes from feeling completely in control to realizing that she is no longer the center of your universe. The realization hits her like a wave. You are not stuck, you are not desperate, and you are entirely capable of thriving without her. Suddenly, the man she assumed was entirely replaceable looks completely unique, and the value she ignored for months becomes the only thing she can think about. This isn't about playing childish games or bashing women. It is a raw, honest look at human psychology. It is about understanding that a woman cannot miss a man who never gives her the space to experience his absence, and she will never respect a value that is never at risk of being lost. Segment 1. It hits when you stop reaching out. The true process of missing you doesn't start during a heated argument, nor does it happen while she is actively giving you the cold shoulder or acting like you don't matter. In those moments, her ego is still highly fueled because she knows she has your full attention. The missing actually begins the exact moment your name completely disappears from her phone screen. When you make the conscious decision to stop texting, stop checking in, and stop sending those little daily updates that she used to pretend were annoying or mundane, a heavy internal silence begins to creep into her mind. You have to realize that most women are conditioned by society to be pursued. They are deeply used to a man constantly proving himself, showing up, and remaining hyper consistent, even when they operate on hot and cold energy. When you keep showing up under those conditions, it gives her an intense sense of security and power. She genuinely believes she has you entirely figured out and wrapped around her finger. And that specific mindset makes it incredibly easy for her to take you for granted without even noticing she is doing it. But the very second that effortless validation stops, a deep sense of confusion sets in. At first, she might try to dismiss it, but soon she finds herself checking her phone far more often than usual, constantly refreshing her feed, and actively watching your social media stories from the shadows, even if she never likes or comments on a single thing. Your sudden distance creates an immediate, visceral anxiety that she cannot control. Her mind begins to race with uncomfortable questions. Why hasn't he messaged me today? Did he meet someone else? Is he genuinely angry? Or is he finally done with me? If her initial withdrawal or cold attitude was just a psychological test to see how hard you would chase and fight for her, your choice to completely walk away instead absolutely shocks her system. She expected you to hold on tighter, and when you don't, the reality of what she is losing hits her all at once. The exact attention and consistency she once overlooked instantly become the very things she craves the most. But she suddenly realizes she can no longer access your energy for free. Segment 2. Remembering what was taken for granted. A woman does not miss you because of massive, over the top, or expensive gestures. She misses you because of the compounding weight of the small things that she failed to appreciate when she had them. It is never about the fancy dinners or the loud, superficial surprises. Instead, it is about the quiet ways you showed up for her without asking for credit. She misses the unprompted morning texts that started her day, the intuitive way you noticed she was exhausted or stressed before she even admitted it, and the fact that you remembered the tiny, passing details about her life that everyone else completely ignored. You made her feel safe, heard, and completely chosen. But because comfort naturally breeds entitlement, she got used to it. She assumed that this was just who you were, the nice, reliable guy who would always care, always give, and always be there regardless of how she treated you. She made your efforts feel invisible, treating your high value like it was a cheap commodity. Once you completely remove your presence from her life, those quiet, everyday actions begin to echo loudly in her mind. Every single new interaction she has with the world is suddenly measured against the high standard you set. When she steps back into the dating pool or looks around at her current options and encounters men who completely lack your emotional depth, your awareness, and your maturity, an intense wave of regret sets in. She realizes with absolute clarity that she didn't just lose someone who casually liked her. She lost a rare, high value man who gave far more than he ever took. This realization hits her hardest in the quietest moments of the night, when she is lying in bed, scrolling through her phone, and seeing things that remind her of you. When someone else gets annoyed at her instead of showing your signature patience, or when she tries to open up to someone new and realizes the connection is completely empty, she feels the void. You taught her a standard of love she didn't even know she truly needed until it was entirely out of her reach. Segment 3. The fake cool versus the inside spiral. When a woman finally realizes she completely miscalculated your worth and lost a good man, her pride will desperately try to prevent her from admitting it right away. Instead of being mature and reaching out to apologize, she will choose to play it cool. She will start posting highly curated highlights of her life on social media, acting completely unbothered, and she might even begin casually talking to or entertaining other men. You must understand that this is never because she is genuinely over you. It is a pure, fragile defense mechanism designed entirely to project the illusion that she has moved on. She is terrified of you knowing that she's sitting in her room thinking about you, replaying old conversations, and panicking over the fact that she mistook your genuine love for absolute weakness. She tries to bury her regret under a mountain of distractions, superficial attention, and external validation from strangers, but none of it actually works. Behind that fake, unbothered exterior, she is secretly and quietly spiraling because real emotional attachments do not simply vanish into thin air. Watching you move forward with your life, level up, and build a beautiful future without her stings her ego on a profound level. It proves to her that your value was never dependent on her validation or her presence. She will consciously hold back and wait, hoping and praying that you will be the one to break the silence first, so she can have an easy, low risk way back into your life. But when you remain completely out of reach and refuse to chase, her ego utterly shatters. This forces her to face the brutal, terrifying questions she was trying so hard to avoid. Was I too cold? Did I expect way too much from him? Did I actually ruin this forever? Uncertainty is an incredibly painful and uncomfortable space for a woman to exist in, especially when that uncertainty is being caused by a man she foolishly assumed would wait around for her forever. Segment 4: Ego versus Emotion. The moment genuine regret sets in, a brutal, exhausting internal war breaks out inside a woman's mind. It is a direct clash between her fragile ego and her true, raw emotions. And this psychological battlefield is incredibly intense. On one side, her logic and her feelings are screaming at her, telling her that she completely messed up and pushed away an incredible partner who genuinely cared for her. On the other side, her stubborn pride is digging its heels in, demanding that she stay cold and distant so she doesn't lose her leverage or look weak. This is especially true for women who are highly accustomed to being constantly pursued, validated, and placed on a pedestal by men. They are so used to having the upper hand that they will desperately cling to their pride, holding on to a false sense of power even when it is actively costing them the exact relationship they are dying to save. They want to reach out, but the fear of humbling themselves and admitting fault paralyzes them, so they stay frozen behind a wall of artificial indifference. But pride has an expiration date, and eventually her true emotions will win the war. The feeling of missing you doesn't hit her all at once in a manageable way. It comes in overwhelming, unpredictable waves that completely bypass her defenses. She might be completely fine during the day, but the second the world goes quiet at night, or the moment she encounters the shallow, uninspired nature of modern dating, the reality of your absence crushes her. She starts going out with new guys only to realize that they don't look at her the way you did. They don't listen the way you did. And they certainly won't tolerate her bad moods the way you did. That is when she is forced to admit the painful, ugly truths she was far too arrogant to voice out loud before. She finally acknowledges to herself that she expected you to read her mind, that she selfishly exhausted your endless patience, and that she foolishly mistook your kindness and compliance for a lack of masculine strength. When this emotional weight becomes too heavy to carry, she will usually try to test the waters, but she won't do it directly. Because her ego is still trying to protect itself from outright rejection, she will throw out low stakes, low effort test messages or subtle social media interactions. This looks like a random, late night, hope you're doing well text, a casual question about an old inside joke, or a sudden like on an old photo. She isn't looking for a deep conversation just yet. She is simply checking to see if the door is still unlocked and if she still has power over your emotions. She wants to see if you will instantly fold and jump at the chance to talk to her again. But if you stand your ground, remain detached, and show her that your energy has permanently shifted, her remaining pride completely shatters. When she realizes that her subtle baits aren't working anymore, she is left with the heaviest, most sickening feeling a person can experience: deep, agonizing regret, with absolutely no path back to you. Segment 5: The Glow Up Reality Check. You need to understand that the absolute peak of her regret does not happen right after the breakup, nor does it happen during the initial weeks of your silence. The real psychological devastation hits her the exact moment she realizes that your life did not stop just because she walked out of it. When a woman takes you for granted, her subconscious mind operates under the assumption that you are entirely dependent on her validation to feel whole. She secretly expects you to be sitting around depressed, listening to sad songs, or staring at your phone, waiting for her to call and save you. She wants to believe that she was the best thing that ever happened to you, and that without her, your life will slowly fall apart. This thought process gives her comfort and keeps her ego fed while she distances herself from you. But when she looks up and sees that the exact opposite is happening, the entire relationship dynamic completely reverses. Seeing a man look visibly happier, physically healthier, and significantly more driven after a separation is a deeply humbling and jarring experience for a woman. It signals a total, permanent loss of power over his mind and emotions. When you choose to completely stop chasing her and instead pour all of that wasted energy back into evolving yourself, hitting the gym, securing your finances, building your business, and upgrading your lifestyle, it forces a massive psychological shift in how she perceives you. Suddenly, the illusion is shattered. She is no longer the high and mighty prize who is evaluating your worth from a distance. Instead, she is hit with the brutal realization that she is the one who failed the test, and she is the one who wasn't high value enough to keep a man of your caliber. What makes this reality check cut so deep is that women are incredibly intuitive. They can instantly recognize the difference between a man who is merely performing for attention and a man who is genuinely in his zone. She knows if you are posting gym pictures or lifestyle updates just to make her jealous. And if she senses that desperation, she will laugh it off. But when your silence has real substance, when you are calm, unbothered, and genuinely building a better life for yourself without an ounce of bitterness or performance, it terrifies her. Your quiet, masculine detachment forces her to look in the mirror and face the undeniable reality that she was the toxic variable in your life. She has to sit there and watch a brand new, healed, and highly evolved version of you succeed from the sidelines. The most painful part for her is knowing that she no longer has access to this elite version of you, and she has to live with the fact that her disrespect was the exact catalyst that forced you to realize you were way too good for her anyway. Segment 6: The Power of Absolute Silence. When a man who used to care with every fiber of his being suddenly goes completely silent, it is the most potent, devastating psychological boundary he can ever set. You need to understand that absolute silence is not just a passive, no contact tactic to get someone's attention. It is a weapon of mass disruption to her ego. When you stop texting, stop calling, stop reacting, and block out her access to your emotional world, you aren't just disappearing. You are erecting a massive psychological mirror right in front of her face. You are forcing her to sit entirely alone with the consequences of her own choices. In the past, whenever there was tension, she had the comfort of your reassurance. She knew that even if she treated you poorly, you would eventually reach out to fix it, explain yourself, or check in. That constant reassurance acted as an emotional safety blanket that allowed her to ignore her bad behavior. But the exact second you pull that blanket away and wrap her in total, unyielding silence, she is left stranded with her own thoughts. And that is a terrifying place for her to be. Your silence undergoes a massive transformation over time. What starts out as a peaceful boundary on your end inevitably mutates into a loud, deafening rejection on her end. Human psychology dictates that the mind hates a vacuum, and when you give her absolutely zero data to work with, her brain will automatically fill the void with her deepest insecurities. Even if she was the one who initially demanded space, initiated the breakup, or walked away first, your absolute lack of a reaction completely flips the script. It makes her feel instantly, entirely replaced. She expected you to chase, to cry, or to at least show that you were hurt by her absence. When you show absolutely nothing, she panics. She will begin to obsessively hunt for signs of your life, scrolling through your social media profiles, checking your Spotify activity, or subtly fishing for information through mutual friends. And when she hits a concrete wall of nothingness, the brutal reality finally drives itself home. You are genuinely, completely gone. Every single woman who has ever taken a high value man for granted harbors one ultimate, deep seated fear. The day that man finally wakes up, realizes his own worth, and decides he can live a much better life without needing her validation or permission. Never break that silence out of loneliness or discomfort. It is doing all the heavy psychological lifting for you while you simply focus on yourself. Segment 7. You teach her how to treat you. Let's be completely direct here. If you allow a woman to treat you like an afterthought, a backup plan, or a convenient option, you are actively teaching her that you are completely replaceable. You have to take extreme accountability for the relationship dynamic you tolerate. The moment you continue to offer unearned loyalty, constant availability, and instant forgiveness to a person who repeatedly disrespects your boundaries, you are systematically lowering your own stock in her eyes. You think you are proving how unconditional and beautiful your love is, but in reality, you are telling her that your self respect is entirely for sale. The uncomfortable truth about human nature, and female psychology specifically, is that women do not respect what they can entirely dominate and control. If your presence in her life has absolutely no conditions, and your boundaries carry no real world consequences, your love stops feeling like a prize and starts looking incredibly cheap, predictable, and low value. You can never fix a toxic dynamic like this by arguing, begging, or screaming for respect. Words possess zero currency when you have already given away all your leverage. The only way to permanently shift the power dynamic is by instantly, cleanly withdrawing your energy the moment it is no longer being actively reciprocated. Being a high value man is never a negotiation, a debate, or a performance. It is an internal standard and an unshakable lifestyle. You must demonstrate through your cold, decisive actions that you are entirely, genuinely unafraid to permanently walk away from anyone who fails to see your worth. If she treated you like an option, stop wasting your breath blaming her and start looking in the mirror to ask why you allowed your precious masculine energy to be misspent on someone who didn't deserve it. The very second you change what you are willing to tolerate, the entire universe around you, and every woman in it, instantly changes how they respond to you.